Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it? You already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up, bye up. Let's get straight to the intro. Welcome back to the channel. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that I stay kicking. And I appreciate the support. I'm very humbled by it. So it's done. It's over with. I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Put a nail in the coffin, man. Unfortunately, little Toro has passed and his funeral was held. And it looked like a nice proceeding, man. It looked like his people, his family, his friends all showed up and they went all out for him. And, you know, I don't want to sit here and beat a horse while it's dead, right? Kick a horse while it's down. But I'll say there was a lot of people in opposition to Little Toro and a lot of people that had a whole lot to say because of his demise. Now, I'll say this, man, my respects and condolences go out to the family, his children, his friends, the people that showed up and show out, the people that every day were there for him behind the scenes. Those are the people that should be commended for putting on such a good funeral service. You know, it's hard on a family when you lose a loved one suddenly, you know, to murder. You lose a loved one just out of the blue. I could say this looked like something that was well prepared, well thought out. And hopefully, man, it could put some closure to the tumultuous and crazy life of Little Toro. The ups and downs, the people that remember the good times and the bad times are of an understanding that that is a final send-off, well worthy of Little Toro, and I'm sure he would have liked what he's seen. So I got some footage, some exclusive footage of the funeral, man, that I'm going to play right now for those of you that are interested. I know there's a lot of people that didn't care for Little Toro. I myself had the ups and downs with them. So I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, that we were best friends or anything like that. But when a man is gone, he has passed, you know, the slate is clean. Whatever he did in this world, he will now suffer for in the afterworld, or he'll be rewarded for. So we're going to see some of his funeral proceedings, and we'll take it from there. I got some new information as well as on an impending arrest and some other things. So let's trip out on it together.
I know you pray for my soul. Always calling, checking on me, saying church is dethroned. You drop money for that bill, got me out of that cell. Fed damage to my brain, used to teach it for real. Told me bad on my friends who aren't really my friends. Now I'm older, everybody is just off of the ends. Should've listened, I was stubborn, didn't.
So as you can see, those that went to support him were there. They pulled up, they showed up. And, you know, it's an unfortunate loss for the rap community and for the people that did care about Little Toro. And I know he got a lot of hate, and there was a lot of people, including myself, man, that questioned his ability to think right a lot of the times. But he's gone now, man. And it really is an unfortunate passing. I'm going to be doing a video pretty soon about all the tragedy that has happened on these YouTube streets, right? So I will say this. The person that was responsible for the murder, the unaliving of Little Toro, has still not been arrested. Now, I'm in contact with the family, the very close family and friends of Little Toro, and we got a continuous conversation going on. We're conversing, and it's only a matter of time before I bring one of his primos on to do an interview to enlighten the people of just who his primo was and what was definitely his issues, because we all know that Little Toro had his issues, man. Let's just keep it a buck. Let's keep it 100. His mental stability was in question, right? And right there towards the end, I believe he needed a hug and he needed some help. He needed a friend. He needed people to pull up on him and to kind of hold him down. And it doesn't seem like he got that. The people he relied on the most, his family, the last bridge that he hadn't burned him down. And that's so unfortunate. So let me give you some details that have not really been put out there. I think we already know by now when it comes to the case, the ongoing murder investigation of Little Toro, that it was an uncle that unalived him allegedly. Okay. Now I'll say this. When you think uncle, you think, someone, a mom's brother or a father's brother who's been around and in your life forever, and it's crazy to think that someone that's that close to you could do something like this to you. But situations happen. People are drinking, or they're on drugs, or there's domestic issues, or a fight, and things happen. I used to learn a lot. I learned a long time ago, and I used to be aware that I never questioned my uncles. I always respected them because they always gave me game. They always laced me up. They were always there for me. And I knew not to play with them on any level, because if I'm sitting here asking a man for clecha, if I'm asking a man to educate me, to give me some type of understanding because my father's incarcerated or he's not there to give me that game, and I'm relying on an uncle, a mother's brother, or a father's brother to do that, then you got to have respect for him. Okay. At the same time, because you look up to him and you admire, the conversations you guys have, the schooling that they're giving you. This man that is alleged to have killed Little Toro was not that. He was not an uncle that Little Toro knew for a very long time. In fact, 2 weeks prior to Little Toro being killed was the first time he ever met this man. He had heard about him, but it was the first time that he had ever come face to face with this man. Now, this man and his wife and another female were living at Little Toro's grandfather's house when Little Toro's grandfather took him in. We're going to clear up some fucking some of the crazy things people are saying about Little Toro's grandfather, and if Little Toro put hands on him and all that, because that's not the truth. I got the real truth and what's going on from a family member that's really, really tapped in, right? Who was right there in that picture, who was at the funeral. So Little Toro, when he was received by his grandfather, when his grandfather gave him a place to lay his head, because to be totally honest with you, Little Toro's been living, he's been displaced for over a couple of years. He was homeless. He was going from hotel to hotel room, and he kind of documented that on his YouTube channel. We watched it all unfold, and I used to give him grief about that. We used to go back and forth, and, there was a consistent storyline out there about him living in tents, and he did at times. And no one truly knows the struggle of what a man's going through with mental health issues, especially when everyone's turning their back on him, or when he was at the epitome or the height of a rap career, when he was really blowing up in the 2000s, and then he falls from grace because of gang issues, because of politics, because of things that he alleged done in the past and things that he was accused of, right? And so nobody wants to open a door for him. Nobody wants to help him. So he struggled. He hard timed it, man. He was really out there living how he was living, trying to get it how he got it, and put a good face on. Okay. At times you could see the stress, you could see the anguish, you could see the anxiety, you could see a lot of the different things he was going through with his mental health. And still people like myself and others continue to ridicule and downplay what he was trying to establish and do. And it was all because of making people think, caring what other people think. He was doing what he did to make light of what his situation was. And because he cared that much about what people thought about him, the old Little Toro, he was trying to keep that still going. When that guy was gone, that guy's been dead a long time ago. Okay, that character, that rapper, everything was gone. He still had the talent. He still had the flow. But that man that he was back in the 2000s when he was blowing up and touring and on stages and doing what he was doing was gone. That was a thing of the past, but he couldn't let it go. The norteño philosophies, the gang banging, that was gone, but he just could not let it go. That's why he kept the symbolisms of the norte, like the Mongolian, the red coloring, clothing. These were things near and dear to his heart. And you could see at his funeral within burial, they still had, they were flamed up. The theme of the color was red of the funeral. And I think that was to give him the proper send-off because that's the way he would want it, right? He was truly a norteño in his heart, even though if he was not loved or embraced by the cause, if you understand what I'm saying. When you grow up and that's all you know, man. You can't knock a man for that's all he knows. Now, I was one of the biggest advocates for saying, let that Mongolian go, let that mentality go, and just try to get back with your children and your family. But he wasn't hearing me, though. It was like a fucking a Rodney O and Joe Cooley song, but you don't hear me, though. And I understand. I understand, man. His mentality was, I'm always going to be this and no one can take this from me, no matter what standings I'm in, no matter what they try to say or do on my character. It is what it is. And I'm not going to get into the whole details and the background of what it was alleged that he did and what people were putting out there. I think we all know by now, it's been said redundantly over and over again exactly what position Little Toro was in and why he was in that position. Okay, there's more to that story, and if eventually I do interview his primo, I'll let him tell that, because I don't want to just repeat or regurgitate drama, garbage, and hearsay, right? I don't know. One thing I know for sure is Little Toro was doing bad, right? He was struggling. He was struggling with his inner demons. And his grandfather gave him a helping hand. His mother's father decided, his last lifeline, to allow him in his home, to allow him to lay there, sleep there. He provided money, clothing, food, put food on his table. It's his grandson. Who wouldn't, right? All that social media drama and all that accusing him of this or that, the grandfather didn't see that. What he seen was his daughter's son, and he was willing to help him. Now, there was a lot of people saying that Little Toro was taking advantage of his grandfather. We don't know that to be true. From what I'm hearing from the family, Little Toro's grandfather loved him, and he loved him dearly and would never take advantage of his grandfather. There's been stories and reports put out there that he was stealing credit cards and that he was misusing and misappropriating his grandfather's funds and his Social Security and his debit cards. And I could tell you right now, from what I'm hearing, that's not true at all. Little Toro loved his grandfather. Now, when this incident happened, like I said, it happened from an uncle, allegedly, that did not know Little Toro, and Little Toro didn't know him. So from day one, they bumped heads. From day one, and I know Little Toro's mentality, having associated or been around him once upon a time, he was a very leery individual, very unnerving. That's one word, right? But very untrusting of you if he didn't know you or you haven't lived that life before. He felt that if you haven't lived that norteño life the way he lived it, then you would not understand the complexities of who he was, exactly what type of man he was and what his mind state was, right? Now, he was all over the place. There's no doubt about that. He was off his pills. He needed coaching and guiding and direction, but he wasn't getting that. But he did get a house to lay in, and this man did not like Little Toro from the gate. This man and Little Toro bumped heads because Little Toro believed, and this is coming from the family member that talked to me, and again, they're not going to be biased towards Little Toro. That's their family as well. But they said that Little Toro was accusing this man of misappropriating his grandfather's funds. So it was the other way around. So the day that happened, Little Toro basically jammed him up like, hey, you're getting over on my grandfather. You're using him. You and your old lady are here living with them. Now, mind you, that is the grandfather's son. That is not Little Toro's full uncle. That is his half uncle. He's half white and half whatever the hell Little Toro was, right? And this man didn't have no loyalty or love or respect for Little Toro. Little Toro was a guy that he felt was coming in fucking up his program. Imagine you got it going on. You got an older gentleman who's your father taking care of you and your wife. You're good. You're at his pad. You're living how you're living. And then this knucklehead comes along who's kind of a J-Cat, who's kind of a little bit off his rocker, and he starts accusing you or realizes what you're doing there. And so in the midst of that, they had some words. There is some video footage that I'm sure was released to the detectives. And I'll break that down for you right now. But Little Toro did jam him up, and there was some pushback. And they argued, and Little Toro did do a video where he said, he felt like there was going to be some conflict with this man. And Little Toro was seen on video footage, ring camera footage within the home, running away from this man. Okay, I guess there was conflict. Little Toro jammed him up, and this guy pulled out a knife and said, I'm going to kill you. Get away from me. And Little Toro took off. Did go outside on the porch and made some phone calls, was trying to leave the situation and leave the scene. In typical Little Toro fashion, he was conflicted, whether get off where he was mad at or flee the scene. Unfortunately, he was not able to get away. There was another verbal confrontation, and the man came out, and Little Toro was stabbed in the neck. He was stabbed a couple times, and he passed in the front yard off the porch, right? So for those that are going out there saying Little Toro knocked this guy out and he was on this guy, and this guy, little Toro was stealing. That's furthest from the truth. This narrative of what little Toro was and who and his old cases and all that. People continue to drag that through the mud even after death, right? And disrespect him. I've seen videos made, gunners throwing up videos with the Chomo, gunners doing this, gunners doing that. Let me tell you something, man. That man died, and like I said, the slate's wiped clean. I'm not going to sit here and say I would hang out with them and he was my best friend or nothing like that. But I recognize what he was going through. And as a man, I'm not going to fucking kick someone when they're down and continue to do so. I'm just going to say, hey, his life was his life. He lived it the way he lived it. And that's it, right? For those that are spreading propaganda and misusing his name and misinforming people, man, that, what's new? What's new? Especially when it's from individuals that would never say anything to that dude in his face, who would never pull up on that dude. And their excuse is going to be, of course I wouldn't. I don't hang around those type of people. Oh, yeah? Well, guess what? The people that hang around you are going to be enlightened to exactly who you are. And they're not going to want to hang around you people, right? So, hey, there's skeletons in every closet, but that closet isn't always tightly shut. So we'll get to that eventually one of these days. It's coming. With that being said, Little Toro did not put his grandfather in a coma. Little Toro did not hit his grandfather. He loved his grandfather. He was not stealing from his grandfather. In fact, Little Toro, like I said, accused this man, the guy who allegedly killed Little Toro, his half uncle, that he just met over a bowl of cold Captain Crunch, right? Soggy ass Captain Crunch. He accused him, and ultimately he lost his life because of it. Now, I'll say this. The narrative with his grandfather is doing well. He is out of the hospital. His grandfather, in the midst of this situation, trying to break it up, he's older. He was hurt, not by Little Toro, not by that man. He just was hurt in the situation. And he was in a coma. He was put in a drug-induced coma. And that was because he was so old and they wanted to stabilize him. He has since come out of the coma and he's well in at home. And I'm sure he's heartbroken for his grandson and for the whole situation. You got to understand, this is a family that's busted up. These are children that lost their father. No matter what you think or say about their father, no matter what I think or say about their father, they lost their father. That's all they see. His ex lost her baby's dad. His mother lost a child. His grandfather lost a grandchild. The uncle lost a nephew at his hands, allegedly, right? It's just so much going on there. It's so complex. But for the people that are talking shit and disrespecting that man, I've seen people because of his funeral services. Why'd they fucking wear red? Why'd they this? He wasn't a norteño. He didn't deserve that. What makes you think you do? What have you done for the cause that you deserve to even speak on a man that you don't really know? It's situational. I get it. It's crazy because a lot of these dudes that run around disrespecting that man or disrespecting other dudes that are no longer in good standings or dropouts or degenerate, whatever you consider them, right? A lot of them may never did nothing. There are some that have, and the ones that have and the ones that know what's up would never disrespect. They just grit their teeth and say, when I see you, I see you. But the ones that continuously disrespect, it's because they ain't never been nowhere. They ain't never been around some real motherfuckers. They don't know what time it is. They don't understand the way the politics work, right? Those are the type of dudes, their homeboy will fall off and they'll still be hanging out with them and kicking it, but they'll be politicking on the next man from another VOD group. That's the truth, man. I know because I did it. I had homeboys that went to Pleasant Valley or homeboys that went to Bad Yards and they'd get out. And you know what our thing was? Fuck that, bro. You're still the homie from the hood. It don't matter, right? And then meanwhile, I'm politicking, trying to fucking dust someone because they stood on a bad yard the next day, so I'm older now. I've moved on from that lifestyle, but I understand what it entails. And so I think it's a despicable move to consistently and constantly disrespect a man, especially when he's passed, right? But he did have his funeral, and it was a great turnout. A lot of his friends and his family showed up, and it is still in an ongoing investigation. There's a little bit more to it because you would think that this man would already be arrested. They have ring camera footage of Little Toro running away from the scene. There's phone calls that were made where he was trying to leave. So it's just unfortunate, and it's kind of odd that this man has not been arrested. I could only think that either two things are coming into play here. It was done in Concord, and Concord is pretty whitewashed, man. And, another Mexican dying. I'm not making a racial, but it could be that way. Another thing could be that Little Toro did pose a serious threat to this guy. This guy being an older gentleman than Toro was able to relay that to the detectives, and they took it for what it was. Being that fucking Little Toro had mental instability, right? He wasn't stable that could have played into it. I guess we'll know when we know. With that being said, man, the funeral was held. I'm going to play the clip one more time for those of you that want to see it. And that's just what it is, man. You know, rest in peace to little Toro. You know, and I'm not saying that from someone who's a fanboy or someone who, but just, you know, let that dude rest already. Straight up, man. Have some sympathy for his family and his children. Fuck.
I know you pray for my soul. Always calling, checking on me, saying church is dethroned. You drop money for that bill, got me out of that cell. Fed damage to my brain, use a teacher for real. Told me bad on my friends who aren't really my friends. And I'm older, everybody is just off of the ends. Should've listened, I was stubborn, didn't.
This video is sponsored by Vadio Liquors in Turlock, California. If you're ever in the area, make sure that you pull up to the Vadio and go get you something cold to drink, as well as Sticks and Stones yard service. Man, it's hard to watch, man, especially when you knew that guy. Well, tap into Sticks and Stones out there in AZ, man, and get you some yard service done. Thank you, guys. Bang, bang.